Where was the cat when Bane broke the bat? Here's your look at the McFarlane Toys Batman Knightfall Catwoman. As an orphan growing up in the streets of Gotham City, Selina Kyle became a thief to survive. After perfecting her skills as a cat burglar, she now wears a cat suit to steal from the corrupt and rich as Catwoman. Unlike most criminals, Catwoman walks the line between good and evil with occasional acts of heroism between heists. Catwoman is a master of martial arts and acrobat, as stealthy as a ninja. She's also an expert at breaking and entering. Her bullwhip is her main weapon. Alongside claws, she uses to scale buildings and scratch enemies. She also flirts with her opponents to distract them, especially Batman. Watch out, this cat's got claws. Before we get a closer look at the brand new Knightfall Catwoman, I'd like to thank the folks over at McFarlane Toys, who did come through and did provide this sample that we're about to have a look at. I'm going to grab now the tape measure, as I always do, just to figure out how tall the figure stands. In this case of Catwoman, the figure's only about 6.5 inches in height, which translates to a figure that's about 17 centimeters tall. Seeing as we have looked at some Batman figures lately here on this channel, we can bring in a couple right now for comparisons. Here's what Catwoman looks like, at least if she was from the 90s, along with Batman from Hush. Here's what she also looks like against the recently looked at Infinite Frontier Joker, a very radically designed Joker. In this case, you can see that Catwoman is clearly the shortest of the three. What's not short, though, is the included whip that comes included with Catwoman that we'll look at in a moment. In the meantime, though, let's have a look at the display stand. Then we'll move our attention over to the trading card. The stand is, yes, the same stand that we've gotten with all the other DC Multiverse releases, and also you can extend to that. The Warhammer figures, the Spawn figures, and the Mortal Kombat figures have all included this display stand. Fairly, though, it probably wasn't printed with the DC logo down below. That's one thing that's a little bit different, but yes, other than that, it's the same stand that we always get. To be fair, also, I don't want to jinx myself by saying this, and for that reason, I'm probably going to keep the stand pretty close. Catwoman, despite having high heels, and I can only imagine how difficult that would be to running along the rooftop of Gotham City buildings with high heels, but she actually stands pretty good on her own. I've now just jinxed myself for the rest of this video. The figure also comes included with a trading card. I don't know, speaking of jinxing, what's with me lately trying to remove these trading cards successfully in the opener of these videos? I always seem to have a tough time lately getting these cards out. Maybe they're using stronger glue. Anyways, though, I've curled a bit of the corners here. I'm going to have to try to flatten that out. Once again, we're treated some gorgeous looking artwork here of Catwoman. I'm not sure specifically from a panel of the Knightfall. It's got to be something related to Knightfall. Obviously, it's Knightfall down below, and that's the classic 90s Catwoman costume. One of my personal favorites growing up. But you can see very seductive and sultry Catwoman is here depicted on the photo. You don't see really anything other than just her face and pouty lips. Although this face, the figure's face, I don't think is as good as what we're getting here for the artwork, but we're going to talk more about that in a moment. In the meantime, though, on the back, we've got Selina Kyle's the real name and a very long, that's quite the feat to digest. You can see there's a very long paragraph. Don't worry, I did read that at the beginning of the video, so you don't have to do that. You can if you want. You can pause it. Grab yourself a cup of coffee. You can read through it if you want, but I did that. I saved you that one extra step. This is going to definitely go into my trading card sheets. I love the artwork that they used for this trading card. Going to move that to the side. Then on to the whip, which I did already say was quite long. I mean, just to look at this, it's about, what, 2.5 Catwoman long? I don't know if that's ever a unit of measure you'd want to use. Well, that room is about 2.5 Catwoman long. Now, the whip, though, is quite long. Glad to also see as well that they used a softer plastic to accommodate the whip. The whip then does have some quite easy whippability to it, if that's really a word. The handle, though, once again, is pretty thick, though. So when she's carrying this in her hand, it does look like she's almost carrying around a can of spray paint. You can't put this into her hand. The figure also comes included with a couple of hands. I don't know why I left those off for right now. They're just over there to the side. But she does hold it, but the handle, once again, does look quite abnormally large for really the sizing of her hands. But I'm glad to see, once again, they give us a pretty pliable looking whip. Put the figure down here for 1 second. The figure, here I go, now I've just jinxed myself by saying the figure stands fine on her own. The figure, I don't know why I left the hands off. Here I was talking about the whip being the only thing that really she came included with. That's not 100% true. She comes also included with some clawing hands. clawing hands would be probably the best way to describe these, as certainly it would look like she'd lay into somebody's face if they're not too careful. The hands themselves do swap out. We're going to talk more about that in a moment. Let's, in the meantime, though, remove the whip, put that to the side. And by the way, the gripping hands stock out of the figure, out of the packaging, does have gripping hands. So if you wanted to have the whip on either side, you can accommodate that. But what we are going to do in the meantime, though, is I'm just going to wiggle off one of the hands, and I'm going to replace it with thumbsies going in, thumbsies going in. I'm going to replace it with one of the clawing hands, just to show you guys what it looks like. I might just ultimately choose to have one gripping hand on the one side, so she always has the means to hold the whip without me having to go back to the tickle trunk to swap the hands out, and then I'm probably just going to have the clawing hand for the other side. Moving the rest of those things all out of the way, let's get a closer look at Catwoman's face. Okay, so here's the thing. I really like the design of 90s Catwoman. It has now since been replaced by sort of what you would consider the Hush Catwoman that has the goggles on the top, the red, the black cowl, but the red goggles, a black skin-tight suit. But for a while growing up, my always go-to favorite Catwoman design was always the longer hair in the back, 90s Catwoman design, which is essentially what we're getting right here. The face is good. What I would say, though, is there's a couple of things I probably would have maybe tweaked a little bit to the face. For that, it involves me bringing back in the card. I think like the skin tone, for example, maybe a tad too light. I would have maybe darkened that a little bit color, more to the closer color than what we get here on the trading card. I also would have given her a bigger smile. She seems so sad, like she's lost a kitten. I don't know. She's misplaced something that's got her down in the dumps. I would certainly have put a bigger smile on her face. Showed a little bit of visible teeth, for example. It doesn't have to be so sultry as what we're getting here on the comic, or on the card, but at the very least, I do think her face is a little on the more sadder or neutral side. Just a big smile would have gone a long way, I think, to really jazz up the look of the figure's face. Figure's face is pretty enough, but I think by just darkening the shadowing, darkening the skin tone, first of all, and then by adding a big smile, it would really have changed the scope of what this figure looks like. The color of the purple is also quite faded here on this figure. I'm so used to Catwoman having a more vibrant purple, maybe not to the extent of, well, even like any one of the Jokers we've looked at before where it has the more darker purple, I think would have suited very nicely for this Catwoman body. Like the purple is good, but I feel like it probably could have been a little bit darker than that. The purple I can certainly live with, though. The face, on the other hand, I do think like the face sort of really needed a big smile on her face, because that's the thing I think really would have popped on this figure's sculpt. The rest of the body is pretty good. The one thing that many people have certainly mentioned is the way they've sculpted the lower half of her body. They have mentioned there are a few little things that sort of protrude on the figure's sculpting here. In hand, I don't see it as much, but I would certainly say, like, when it comes to her, now, granted, it's a skin-tight suit. She's putting this on. I can only imagine she's just spray painting it onto her body. So it should, in theory, be all one piece. I don't know if there's actual working zipper anywhere on the figure's body. So for all intents and purposes, like this part of it, even though it does look a little higher on the figure's frame, I have to kind of think to myself, it's one seamless suit. So it's not really the case where this is pants, where it's higher on the figure's body than really what it should. But it does look like it's a little higher sitting on the figure's torso. Like if only they had maybe just made a cut a little bit lower down below. Like if they had just shortened this just a little bit, I think it would have corrected whatever off I feel like the figure's body is. It actually isn't so bad in hand, but I do think like the lower trunks here, like this part of the lower figure body, which is very soft plastic, I also might say, I think probably could have really helped to be lower to show more abdomen and a whole lot less kind of waist area. Most of the pants, again, most of this is all kind of just the molded plastic. There are elements that I got to feel have been painted, like, for example, her bicep high gloves. Again, like everything is so skin tight on this. I can't imagine Catwoman being able to freely move around. She also has a very shiny kind of pleather look to her, to the thigh high boots that she also is sporting. And I did say that she does have high heels. It's got to be one of the most uncomfortable bodysuits you got to think that a character would have to run around in. But yet Catwoman for a while in the 90s all sported this outfit. Again, ended up being one of my favorite looks to the character. They did add a little bit of paint, as you can already see here on the back of the hair. Normally in the comics as well, especially back in the day that this costume would have originated in, there would have been a lot of blue highlights used for the hair. There may be some that could say that there's a little bit too much blue to the hair. I don't think it's bothering me as much as maybe some of the other features I mentioned before, like the big smile. The smile on the face, I think, is for me the number one. I would have given her certainly a more playful expression than what we're getting right here. She seems so sad. So sad, Selena. that I definitely would have made given her a better expression than what we get right here. The face is pretty, but I think the mouth is the thing, the key to making this a perfect looking Catwoman. For the articulation on her, now she's going to be a little bit more limited just because there's so much hair on the back of her cowl here. You can only move her hair, or only move her head really, back and forth only just by a little bit. As I'm moving it, it certainly feels like the hair is a separate piece, that if I move it too far, I almost feel as if like the hair is going to come off. You can kind of see the way I'm wiggling it back and forth. Head only looks up just by a little bit. The head looks down certainly a lot more than what it does, than does up. Speaking of up, you can also bring the arms up beyond, I would say, the point of a 90-degree angle bend. You take the arms and, yeah, rotate them all the way around on both the sides. She does have a bicep swivel, which actually is nicely hidden as part of the glove. There's no obvious cut that sometimes you see with the figure's bodies. They actually have put the cut where the glove naturally would be attached to the figure's body. She does have a double hinge on the elbow, which is nice to see. She has a hand swivels all the way around, both the sides, even the hand I end up changing out. Just make sure I've got the plugged in all the way. The figure has an upper torso ball joint. The figure has also a lower torso ball joint that's actually just below the waist area, which again is very soft plastic. Again, I would have probably taken this cut and I would have moved the cut up so it was just right around here. Kind of where you see that wrinkle right there underneath her chest. I would have probably put the cut like right there. So it would have had more of the mid-torso exposed, or more of the mid-torso visible, and then I also would have dropped these down just a little bit, maybe put the cut right there. So you would have had more, because I think it's throwing off sort of the proportions of the figure here. But either way, though, she does have an upper torso ball joint. She has a lower torso ball joint as well. The legs do split out. They seem, once again, to be on ratcheted joints. You take the legs and move them forward and move them back, and again, because you got the softer plastic. Sometimes these might get a little hung up in the top of the thigh there, but overall it's not too bad. She has no swivel in the waist or swivel in the thighs. It actually kind of looks like she should have a swivel cut right there, but it doesn't seem to be the case. Figure has a double hinge on the knee, though, and she does have articulation not only in the ankle, but you can also rock it back and forth, and the figure does have toe articulation. I almost don't even feel like the figure needs toe articulation. What we're getting here with the ankle, I think, is more than enough. You know, again, overall, it's a nice-looking figure of Catwoman, and it does finally give us a Catwoman from the 90s that, for me, has always been my favorite design of Catwoman until eventually we got kind of introduced to the Hush Catwoman suit, which I guess is now sort of my go-to when it comes to when I think of Catwoman. I think right away of the Batman Hush Catwoman, but for a while, like 90s, let me just fix her claw. For a while, though, like the 90s Catwoman was where it was at when it came to her design. And, you know, I got to say, like, it translates okay to a figure. There are things I probably would have changed to it, but overall, I'm just happier than anything just to finally get ourselves a 90s Catwoman that can finally put on display along with Bane. The 90s for me was when I was collecting comics the most. I had myself an extra newspaper route on the side, so I had a little bit of extra money, so I would be going in regularly to my local comic book store, throwing down $30 and walking out with a stack of comics. When you think about it, $1.25 for issues back then is very easy to grab a lot of reading material. And during the big milestone runs of the death of Superman and the breaking of the Bat during the Knightfall run, I was going in weekly, it seemed, to get new issues. I had a little bit of extra money, so I was also branching off and picking up some of the other titles that DC was doing at the time, including one such title, Catwoman, wearing this specific outfit. So for me, I always recognized this Catwoman as my earlier days of collecting comics, so I have sort of a soft spot when it comes to this figure release. I don't know if I would say necessarily it translates 100% to what we got with the original comics. I seem to remember that Catwoman, I might even still have those issues in my storage. The original Catwoman suit, while looking a lot like this, I think the original Catwoman costume was a little bit more of a darker purple than what we get right here. They approached this costume a little bit lighter than what I remember, but there's enough at least that I recognize this Catwoman, especially with the hair coming out the back of her cowl. The face isn't 100% perfect, especially considering that they included a card that I see a much more playful looking Catwoman that I wish some of that could have been translated also to this figure as well. Just giving her a simple smile and darkening the tone of her skin, I think could have gone a long way to improve the overall head sculpt. But other than that, I do think it's a really nice looking Catwoman that I think they could probably even use for a future release Catwoman, using the suit that we get right now, either giving us a gray suit Catwoman or even giving us an earlier Catwoman that doesn't even have the hair sticking out the back of the cowl. I think there's definitely mileage they can make out of this mold, but I would like to have seen maybe a big smile on her face, some expression other than the neutral expression that we get. That's for me the only thing I would have done differently to the figure, but other than that, I'm really, really happy with how this one turned out. What do you guys think of Catwoman? Let me know down below in the comments section whether you've had the chance to pick up this one for yourself or based on this review. What do you guys think of it? Also, as well, I'd like to thank the folks over at McFarlane Toys that did provide this sample of the Knightfall Catwoman that we could have a look at in this video. If you guys certainly as well enjoyed this video, want to hit with a like. Also as well, if you want to stick around and see more from what this channel is putting out on a regular basis, then make sure if you haven't already done so that you hit the subscribe button down below, and as well you turn on the bell notification. We are also going to be looking at some more DC Multiverse reviews, so if that's the kind of thing you like to come to this channel for, definitely stick around because there's going to be a lot more coming your way. As always guys, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.